Right, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, week 13, Sunday action kicking off here in less than 24 hours. It's going to be a great little weekend of fantasy football. We're basically, feels like we're halfway done with the week already. We've had 4 games played, 3 games on Thanksgiving, obviously a game on Black Friday and some really high scoring affairs. So we've got a lot that's already happened. And in terms of, you know, fantasy implications were huge in those games. We had just a wild, some people call this Thanksgiving slate the best Thanksgiving slate of games of all time. And that was before the games were even played. And they did not disappoint him. Maybe the Black Friday game from a fantasy perspective disappointed some of you guys, but ultimately it was pretty solid as well. But nonetheless, we've already moved swiftly into week 13, but we do have a full slate of Sunday games coming here, and we have one Monday night game, of course. So y'all know what we need to do, baby. We're going to roll through some fantasy Q&A. Anything that you guys need to start, sits, ads, drops. Who's on the waiver wire? What do you need? It is money time, boys and girls. I mean, we are in the thick of it. You're either in or you're out. You're either getting a ticket to the chip or you're not. This is a time of year for fantasy football where some people do start to check out, relatively speaking, because maybe they're not in. That's why I always structure all my leagues that there is a prize for the toilet bowl. We got to keep the bottom of the bracket in it. We got to keep them active on the waiver wire. We got to keep them actively spoiling those top teams and moving around the rankings. So if you guys don't do that, I do encourage you guys to. But don't check out, boys and girls. There's still some fun. There's still something to play for. And right now, we got a lot of people who are dialed in because they still have a chance to make it in. So whatever your case is, whatever the circumstance is, have some fun with it, guys. We only have a couple weeks left. This season has flown by. It's been a crazy NFL season. It's only going to remain crazier over the next coming weeks, no matter what you're up against. Even if you played Rashee Rice and George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb and DeAndre Swift, whatever combination, it's not over. We don't know what's going to happen this weekend other than it's going to be a great weekend of football. So get in the live chat. Let me know how you guys are doing. Let me know how your holiday went. Any fantasy football questions that you guys need answered, you know what we're here for. We're going to roll through them. All right. So we got the Saints at the Dolphins, looking at the early games. Texans at the Colts. Falcons at the Jets. Niners at the Browns. Rams at the Panthers. Jags at the Titans. Cardinals at the Bucks. Moving in the afternoon slate, Vikings at the Seahawks, Bills at the Steelers, Raiders are at the Chargers. Sunday night, Broncos at my Commanders. Let's go. That's going to be painful. Giants are at the Patriots on Monday Night Football. So we got some games here. We do. And in terms of news, very quickly, see if there's anything super pressing, and then I'll start rolling right into the live chat. Darren Waller is going to play this week. That's like that's it. That's the top of the news. Darren Waller will be out there and active for the Dolphins. Omarion Hampton is out this week. We've known that for over 24 hours. Brian Thomas Jr. is expected to play. Alvin Kamara is out. Devin Neal will be the starting running back for the Saints. JJ McCarthy, 9 himself, out in concussion protocol. We're going to get Max Brosner season. Let's go. CJ Stroud has been cleared from concussion protocol and will play. Aaron Rodgers will play for the Steelers. Jackson Dart will make his return. We got some quarterback action. Jaden Daniels out. He will not play. Terry McLaurin is, however, expected to play. Baker Mayfield expected to play. A lot of QB injuries. Cardinals running back Trey Benson has been ruled out. I would check your waivers for Bam Knight because DeMarcado is also out. I know Bam Knight was banged up, but he's expected to play, and good enough matchup against the Bucs. They've been pretty bad in terms of fantasy points allowed to running backs. They're not bad at stopping the run, but still giving up a lot of fantasy points to running backs. And that looks like it for the top of the news. All right. Let me get rolling here. Like I said, get in the live chat. Even if you guys don't have fantasy questions, let me know how you guys are doing. Let me know how the holiday went. And let me know what lineup you guys are looking at. What situation you're in your league. Are you in? Are you out? Are you on the fence? Are you on the bubble? Have you already clinched? All right, Luis. Flex 1, Charbonnet, Mechie, Waller, Booty, up 21, just need a floor. Well, I would say the floor probably lies with Zach Charbonnet here. But, like, is the floor even that safe? I mean, I do think this is going to be like a statement game for the Seattle Seahawks here in week 13. I think they're going to continue kind of like what they did in week 12 on the road against the Titans, where like they are going to put up points early and often. They are like favored by 10. I think 9.5 is the spread on that game. I'll have to pull up the spreads in a second here. I mean, they're favored heavily in this game. The Vikings are not particularly a bad run defense, but they are at the same time, they give up a lot of rushing yards. Like they're a run funnel-esque team. In terms of teams in the top 12 fantasy points allowed to running backs, the Vikings are the 12th best team, but in that range, they've given up the most rushing yards of any team. 9 rushing touchdowns. I mean, that's not awful. It's not great. So they're a weird little run defense here, but it's not an awful matchup. The Vikings much better against the wide receiver position in terms of fantasy points allowed. So I do think that this is a game where Charbonnet will have some sort of involvement, but I do think Walker will get more involvement. But I think Charbonnet can get you about 10 points. So if you're looking for the floor, I think it's there. I do like John Mechie as well, as that Falcons secondary has become a little bit softer in recent weeks, now 18th overall in terms of fantasy points allowed to opposing wide receivers. We know that they are softer against the run, opposite kind of issue here, the Falcons defense and the Vikings defense. But I think John Mechie is a solid start. So it's probably between those two guys. In full PPR, I probably lean Mechie because like Charbonnet has the competition of the Walker touches. But I would say it's between those two guys. I would like to see Booty get, that involvement again. And he could pop, against that Giants secondary. I would not be surprised if he has a good game. But only had 2 targets last week, and that was in a game where the Patriots needed to throw the football, but that was also his first game back from action. So he's a little sneaky. But if you just want a floor, I'd probably go Mechie. I'm not going to put Waller into this equation. I don't think that is necessary. Thank you for the super chat. What's up, Wilson? What's up, Mando? Need help streaming a tight end? Colby Parkinson, Taysom Hill, Darren Waller, or Gunnar Helm. Once again, I think Waller is like I don't feel confident enough to roll Waller out there right out of injury. But I mean, he was getting that usage when he was healthy, so maybe that's a mistake by me. The Saints defense is so weird. Like they're okay. They're just like okay against everything. 17th against tight ends. I could see him having a good game, but I'll tell you who I really like here is Colby Parkinson. I think he's very sneaky. He's a touchdown in 3 straight games, 5 or less targets, 4 or less catches in 3 straight games, but 9.4 or more fantasy points in 3 straight games. Interestingly enough, he's had 14.1 fantasy points in 2 of the last 3 games, right on the dot. And 4 catches, 41 receiving yards, a receiving touchdown in 2 games. Almost identical stats, except one of those games he has 5 targets. There's my fun fact of the week. The Panthers have struggled against the tight end position on the season. They don't particularly give up a lot of touchdowns to the tight end position, just 5 touchdowns allowed on the year, but they do give up a lot of receiving yards, 799 receiving yards allowed to tight ends. That is the second most of any team. The Bengals have given up over 1,100 receiving yards. They are just boo-boo. Boo-boo, who's a doo-doo. I mean, they're bad, okay? The Panthers, they really struggle in terms of receiving yardage allowed. So I will say Parkinson's really getting his money from those red zone looks and touchdowns. So maybe this matchup doesn't bode great for him. The Panthers are another defense. This defense is they're not bad. They're not. I mean, I know they just kind of got embarrassed on Monday Night Football, but They picked off Brock Purdy 3 times, only gave up 20 points. Like, they're not I wouldn't say a good defense, but they're not bad. And I've said that throughout the whole year. But yeah, I think Parkinson, matchup based, is the guy. I mean, he's 6% rostered. I would go with Parkinson. I think Gunnar Helm, his usage has been encouraging, and Jacksonville is another one of these teams. They give up the second most fantasy points to tight end, so he's definitely intriguing. I actually think the Titans are going to have, dare I say, a good game. I won't say more than a good game. But like the spread on that game is the Titans are minus or plus 6.5. I think that they're going to cover the spread. I think that it's actually going to be a decently pleasant surprise, a late season emergence here of the Titans. They were okay offensively last week against Seattle. I think they're going to be okay at home against Jacksonville in a divisional game this week. And I think they might struggle on the road against Cleveland and San Francisco in the following weeks, and then struggle against Kansas City at home. But this is a nice spot for the Titans. And so I don't dislike Gunnar Helm, but I think I'd risk it with Parkinson. I know some people are talking about Taysom Hill. I get it with the Kamara injury, and I mean, there's really nobody. There's Jawan Johnson, Chris Olave. I mean, I get it. Tyler Shuck did have a lot of red zone carries last week, so I am not starting Taysom Hill and not going to encourage you guys. So I go Parkinson would be my play, but I do think Gunnar Helm is solid. I think Waller's still solid, so you have good options here. Nico Collins or JJ, yeah. I'm going to go Nico Collins here. This will be a competitive game. I think both teams are going to be forced to throw the football. This is another really interesting game on this week's slate. We have that Colts offense, still very good. Last week, obviously, they were up early against the Chiefs and then had very minimal movement in the second half of that game, but the Chiefs defense still very stout. And then we have that Texans defense. Like this is going to be a matchup that I'll have my eyes peeled on in the early slate tomorrow. But yeah, I do think, that this is going to be a game where the Texans will need to throw the football. Stroud's back in the mix. I don't know if that's better or worse for our boy Nico. But the Colts, bottom 10 unit in terms of fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. They have stiffened up a bit in recent weeks. This was one of the weaker secondaries that we targeted early in the season. But still, I mean, over 1,700 receiving yards, 149 catches, 10 receiving touchdowns. Now, obviously, Sauce Gardner in the mix. He will impact things here. I just would feel more confident. I'm more confident Nico Collins in that passing attack than I am Max Brosner and JJ. JJ 11.1 or less fantasy points in 3 straight games. 5 or less catches in 3 straight games. They're on the road here against Seattle. You can't like that. Seattle, 11th fewest fantasy points to wide receivers. I just think Seattle's going to have a good game. I'm not completely discrediting that the NFL is always an intriguing place and interesting things can happen. Players can surprise us, and maybe Max Brosner comes out and does some things here. We've seen much stranger things happen. No pun intended for anyone watching the new season of Stranger Things on Netflix. I'm not sponsored by Netflix. Netflix, pay me for this endorsement. But yeah, I'm gonna lean the Seahawks are the heaviest favorite of the week, if I'm not mistaken. I think I'm about to just pull it up because I've already referenced this twice. But the Chargers might be the heaviest favorite. I think they're like minus 10.5. I think the Seahawks are minus 9.5, and I think that fits pretty well. So I'm gonna go with Nico. I know it's tough. There. Bo Nix or Jacoby Brissett? You're questioning Jacoby Brissett at this point in the season, Wilson? I'm just kidding. It is a tough choice here. I like both these guys a lot this week, but I think Jacoby Brissett's going to have a great game. This Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense seems to be getting worse by the week. They have given up the 27th most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. They just got sliced and diced by Matthew Stafford. Jacoby Brissett has thrown the football 44 times or more in every start except for 2, 44 times or more in 3 straight games. I mean, remember, he set the NFL record in week 11 for 57 passing attempts. The jersey he wore that game got sent to the NFL Hall of Fame. The following week, he only had 6 less completions, All right, did I do my math right? I had just 8 less completions. Still, he had 49 passing attempts this past week. So, I really like Jacoby Brissett this week. Don't know if Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to play. My feel is that MH is not going to play, but then the reporting as this week has gone on is implicated that he might play. So I guess that's good. But yeah, Bo Nix, on the other hand, coming out of the bye week, the Commanders giving up the 30th most fantasy points, so more fantasy points than the Bucs to quarterbacks. And yeah, they look rough. But they're also coming out of their bye week. Like, they've had extra time to prepare here. So I really do like the Broncos offense this week. I think this is going to be a good game for Bo Nix. I know he's sporadic, and his last 2 starts were god-awful, at least fantasy-wise. He played pretty well against the Chiefs, just didn't score or throw any touchdowns. I would say Bo Nix maybe a bit safer. I think the game script will be more competitive between the Cardinals and the Buccaneers. So I think Jacoby has more upside, but they're both very good starts for sure. Juffy, you're the best channel out here. Thanks, bro. I appreciate that. All right, let's see. Start 2, Robinson, Pittman, or McLaurin. I would just sit McLaurin. It's a tough matchup. Mariota's the quarterback. We like, what have we even? I mean, like, I dropped Terry McLaurin in a league. I'm like, he's just. I mean, albeit I needed running back help desperately in that league. And I have good wide receiver depth, but it's like, I mean, okay, he scored a touchdown in week 8, but he only had 3 catches that game. He had 10 fantasy points in week 3, but he only had 3 catches. It's a bad matchup. The Broncos have given up the 2nd fewest fantasy points to wide receivers. So weeks 8 and 3 for McLaurin. Mariota, his only touchdown pass in week 8 did go to McLaurin. His only touchdown pass in week 3 did go to McLaurin. So, and there's always garbage time. I would just set McLaurin first game back here. Although this will be a game where the Commanders will need to throw. But I'd rather start the other 2 with positive quarterback play. I mean, Mariota's been serviceable, don't get me wrong. Waller or Barner? Yeah, I think Barner is a solid enough start this week, but he is a bit sporadic. Kind of have viewed him as a streaming option for quite a while now. The Vikings do struggle. Bottom 10 in terms of fantasy points allowed to tight ends. 613 receiving yards, 6 receiving touchdowns, 64 catches allowed to tight ends on the season. Like, they're very stout against wide receivers. This Viking secondary, fewest fantasy points allowed to wide receivers, which is crazy. We just talked about the Broncos, right? The Vikings have given up 8 receiving touchdowns to wide receivers. Or excuse me, I'm sorry. The Vikings have given up 8 receiving touchdowns to wide receivers. The Broncos have given up 2 all season long. 2 receiving touchdowns allowed. But the Vikings have only allowed 97 catches on the year. Only other team under 100 is the Browns at 98. Anyways, that Vikings defense softer against tight ends because that focus of that secondary on the wide receiver position, right? So I do like Barner. And we talked about Waller earlier. I think Waller's fine. I wouldn't be like going out of my way to start Waller first game back from injury. So I guess Barner, but if you like Waller, that's fine. Kamani Vidal or Mooney in the flex. What's up, Texans? Stroud. I don't know. I was really low on Mooney last week. Like, I was not encouraging you guys to start him. I mean, he bailed you out. He had a very Mooney-esque touchdown grab at the end there. I don't know how to view this Falcons Jets game. Like, I think Kirk Cousins could come out here and end up having like a really big game, or he could just kind of do what he did like last week, and be okay, or he could be really bad. The Jets have given up the 10th fewest fantasy points to wide receivers, and like it, they have not been bad since the departure of Sauce Gardner, although they haven't played like fantastic teams in that stretch. If I'm not mistaken, like the past few weeks. I mean, okay. I mean, they played, the Ravens, Patriots, Browns. So I guess the Patriots would be the most talented wide receiver, but that was also a game where like Patriots just ran the crap out of the football. So I think I lean Kamani Vidal because this is going to be a game where, once again, the Chargers, the heaviest favorite on the week, they're going to bounce back from week 11, which was bad to say the least. They've had an extra week to prepare, rest. They're going to get up early on the Raiders is my guess. I don't think everyone realizes how much turmoil there is around the Raiders right now. Like, they're firing, offensive coordinators and coaches, but like, man, Pete Carroll's on the hot seat. I really think he is. And Geno Smith is on the hot seat. And there's just like a certain amount of stubbornness, it feels like, and blame going around. And I don't think there's enough accountability. And I think this could be a week where the Chargers defense in that secondary, or the Chargers defense softer against the run this year, very stout against the wide receiver position. I think Geno Smith's going to have a really bad game. I think this might be the week where we finally like see Geno Smith actually end up getting benched as a result from this game. And I think more people realize like this Pete Carroll, like, experiment, this Pete Carroll coaching, like I think he could end up people really realizing that he's on the hot seat and might get fired this year. Or the Raiders could just keep doing what they're doing, But yeah, I do think this is going to be a statement game for the Chargers, and the Raiders are still not a bad team in terms of fantasy points allowed to running backs. They haven't allowed 1,000 rushing yards on the year, 963 rushing yards allowed, but 11 rushing touchdowns. They just had a very poor game defensively against the Browns, at least in the red zone. Judkins didn't actually have a ton of success running the football last week. He just scored 2 touchdowns. He only had 2.94 yards per carry. But yeah, I think that's going to be a game where Kamani Vidal will get involved. It'll be much better than what we saw in week 11 against the Jaguars. So I like Vidal this week. Who? Emeka Egbuka or Michael Wilson? Man, I'll say this. If MH does not play, you're firing up Michael Wilson. That's where we're at in the season. I would start Michael Wilson with no Marvin Harrison over Emeka Egbuka. And I wouldn't even think twice about it. This Tampa Bay Buccaneers secondary, bad. Bottom 10 in terms of fantasy points allowed to wide receivers, and they are like they're trending down in the past couple weeks. Over 1,800 receiving yards, 11 receiving touchdowns allowed on the season. They've given up 144 receptions on the season as well. And yeah, this one is a little tough without knowing the true status of Baker. Well, I think Baker is going to play. I feel like the reports are indicating that Baker's basically in this week. So I don't feel great about Baker or this passing attack this week. I am of high concern. I feel like there's something more going on with Baker, and if he gets hit wrong, like that was the weird thing with the injury last week, is like he didn't. I mean, I know he got hit on one of the runs, like lowering his head, but then when he squared up to throw that Hail Mary before half, like, I mean, he just went down on his knees, and like whatever happened when he threw that football is what really aggravated it. And I'm just afraid, like, I know he's a tough son of a gun. He's going to sling that football and run around no matter what. And he's going to put his team on the back here, and the Bucs are not out of this playoff race whatsoever. especially with the Panthers losing this past week. But man, I got some worries. And the Cardinals defense, like, they're very wishy-washy, but they aren't bad. Kind of like the Saints. Like, they're not great, but they're not bad. This game is at home for the Bucs. So this one is a little tough. I would be interested to get some of your guys' opinions, because I am worried about Emeka Egbuka. I mean, he's had 9 or less fantasy points in 2 straight games. He's had 9.8 or less fantasy points in 5 out of the last 6 games. Okay, we're not in September still, where this man is balling out every week. And like, since September, he's had 2 games, both of which he scored a touchdown, which resulted in double digits. But I will say this, he is getting the targets. He is getting the volume. It's the first game in 2 weeks at home. And the Cardinals are a team technically still in the playoff mix. They're on the bottom of the bubble there. And like, they're not going to back down. They're one of these, like, they're here to spoil the season at the end of the year. If nothing else, I think they have a 1% chance. Yeah, whether they lose or win this week, they have a 1% chance of making the playoffs. So do what you want with that information. But yeah, this is going to be one of those games where I do think there'll be points. It'll be competitive. Both teams will throw the football. So I lean Michael Wilson. If there's no MH, I would definitely start Michael Wilson. If it's Mayfield's out there, MH is out there, I'll say Egbuka has the floor, Michael Wilson has the upside. But usually when I give that answer, the player with the upside has the risk, but I feel like Egbuka has the risk. Weird scenario. Tough call there. Chat, let us know what you guys think. Would you be starting Egbuka or Michael Wilson? I will say this is a tough time of year where you start to kind of overthink it. Like, I benched DeAndre Swift, which is like, I just been riding, this is a league where my running backs, I've just been riding with my guys. It's been all season long. J.K. Dobbins, who's now obviously not a starter, Kyron Williams, DeAndre Swift, like in my lineup every week. And then in recent weeks, Travion Henderson joining the mix. Those have been my only running backs on this team all year long. And after last week, I finally benched DeAndre Swift. Sometimes you just got to roll with your studs. And yes, DeAndre Swift is a stud. Don't come at me, okay? But after the fumble in week 12 on the road against Philly, felt a little nervous. So this could be a game, in other words, where I see Egbuka showing up. We bench him at the wrong time. Better to wait a week or two to start Waller. Yeah, like, don't go out of your way. I mean, he's very startable. Depends on who you guys got, But don't be benching I still feel good about like a Dalton Schultz against a Colts defense that's soft against tight ends, or Jawan Johnson, who's getting very heavy involvement, But yeah, if you're looking at scraps, you're going to roll with Waller. Waller or Ertz. This one's tough. Ertz really hasn't seen an uber amount of production with Mariota at quarterback. He does see like good enough volume, like he is involved. But you look on the season. Okay, Ertz has scored a touchdown in weeks 1, 2, 6, and 7. Okay, Jaden Daniels started all of those games. Okay, those are the only games where Zach Ertz has had double digits. So, like, he's still getting involvement. Don't get me wrong. He's had, like eight targets in week 11. He's had 4 catches in 4 straight games. But he gets that Broncos defense. They've given up the 14th fewest fantasy points to tight end, so they're not like super stout, but not bad. This might be a circumstance where I do go with Darren Waller. Bucky, Tet, Rhonda Robinson, Wilson, Franklin, pick 3.5 PPR. Well, in half PPR, we're going to be looking for that touchdown upside, but you do have good options here. Yeah, Bucky hasn't come up tonight. Man, I know, like, if you own Bucky, and like I have Bucky in some leagues, like, you didn't draft Bucky to not play him. And in half PPR, I do gravitate towards the running back position. Once again, that Cardinals defense is wishy-washy, but they are pretty weak against the run. 25th overall in terms of fantasy points allowed, bottom 10. I don't know, bro. You got some good wide receivers here. You know, the Panthers are going to need to throw. I think T-Mac has a pretty safe floor. But bear in mind, he only had 2 catches last week. One of them just went for a touchdown. The Rams defense is for real. Like, I kind of gravitate T-Mac, Michael Wilson, Troy Franklin here. I do think Troy Franklin's going to have a really nice game. I think Sutton, Franklin, RJ Harvey, all guys that could have really nice games. You guys see my underdog picks on the screen here for week 13. RJ Harvey is on there, and as is Trayvon Henderson, who's being covered up here in case you guys can't see. But really, like I think you could go Sutton, Franklin, or Harvey for a touchdown. I think all these guys are in a great spot against that Commanders defense this week. So I would probably go Tet, Michael Wilson, Troy Franklin. But like if there's one that you don't feel great about, I think you could throw Bucky in over them. I think Robinson's okay. But, you know, getting the Patriots this week, I mean, the weaker part of that defense is the secondary. But also in a weird way, I feel like he has less value with Dart at quarterback, especially in half PPR. So I think I would go Tet, Wilson, Franklin. But once again, if you're not feeling good, you could go Bucky over one of those guys. But in general, I do think Bucky Irving is risky this week. All right, Bolt, Diego. We need 2 wide receivers and a flex and full PPR. Olave, Diggs, Robinson, Michael Wilson, Franklin, Marks. Yeah, good options here. I'm definitely starting Olave. Like, there's no questions there. He's just a start on a week-to-week basis. I would start Diggs. This is a good matchup for Diggs. I know he's been a bit sporadic, but he's still the #1 pass catcher. And the Patriots did not have a good week last week. Like, I think they're going to bounce back here at home before the bye week. They're going to go out guns blazing. Like, we're kind of looking at the NFL right now. And, man, it's a bit weird. Like, you look at the NFC, and I think everyone's got, you know, the Rams as the favorite. The Seahawks playing very well. They're going to have a big week. The Bears are in the conversation as well. Like, the NFC, you know, even with teams like the Eagles and Bucks, Packers and Niners on the outside, Lions and Cowboys right there on the outside. Like, it feels very competitive. But then you look to the AFC and you're kind of like, does anyone trust the Broncos, the Colts, the Steelers, the Chargers, the Jaguars, the Bills, the Patriots, the Texans, the Chiefs, the Ravens? Are the Bengals going to make a run? Can the Dolphins make a run? Like, the AFC is who is the favorite here? Well, I think the Patriots are going to have a very big week against the Giants and that soft defense. Go into that week 14 bye week. They're going to come out week 15 at home against Buffalo. And they might really start to clear up some questions about the AFC right now and who the top dog is there. Now that the Broncos can't win in big fashion this week as well, and then face the Raiders in week 14 and clear up some other question marks there. But I like the Patriots this week, so I'll go Diggs. Sorry to go on a tangent there, but the third option is tough. I think Robinson's okay, but I really like Michael Wilson. I really like Troy Franklin. I will leave Woody Marks out here in full PPR. So I'll go Olave, Diggs, Wilson, Franklin's close. 2 guys that I really like. Really, really like. We'll go Franklin by a hair because it's a better matchup on paper. But I think you go either option and be happy. I mean, Wilson is tough to bench. The Cardinals are throwing the football so much. It's ridiculous. All right, I'll say Franklin a safer floor. Upside is with Michael Wilson. And the floor is still pretty safe with our guy, Mike. What's up, cats? Dude, why do I play you every week, bro? Every week. I go to check these lineups. I'm like, How am I in this many leagues with cats? Bro, we got a big one this week. In the single quarterback dynasty league where I'm the reigning champ. We got a big one, and you're projected to win right now. So I'm team 2 in that league. You're team 4. That's a big one, bro. Dude, I thought, Devonta Smith really let me down. Yeah, that should be good. I'm kind of hoping, I lost Drake London for the week. You know what? I got Greg Dortch in there. I'm going to swap him out in case Marvin Harrison plays. I'm going to put Quentin Johnston in. So watch out. But yeah, that'll be a good matchup. So good luck. Hope you had a good Thanksgiving. All right, Cali Loco. 1 flex, half PPR. McMillan, Woody, Higgins, Tez. Well, Higgins is out, right? Wait, game's already been played. Oh, Jaden Higgins. My bad. I was like, what? I do think Jaden Higgins is actually kind of sneaky this week. But I have a tough time benching McMillan. I'll go McMillan. If you don't like the matchup overall, I mean, that Rams secondary is playing better as of late. But obviously that Rams defense much more stout against the run. They're just really starting to do a good job of improving the secondary play based on how good the run defense and the pass rush is. So if you guys are worried about McMillan, I do think you could go Jaden Higgins this week. Tez Johnson's interesting too. We buy homes near you. What's up? Need one. Diggs, Ibuka, RJ, Jettis. I'll go Diggs. Gosh, man. NFL's crazy. I'll go Diggs here. Safest play in my eyes. We just broke down Diggs a few minutes ago, so. And we broken down Ibuka and JJ on the stream, so you should be good in terms of my explanation. All right, let me know if you guys can't hear me too well. I'm adjusting over here. I want to lean back, but I don't want to be far away from my mic, so I don't think it's going to work. Will, should I grab Parkinson or Strange just in case Warren doesn't play? I have to drop Charbs or Addison, also T-Mac or MH. Yeah, I would grab one of the tight ends, and I would drop Addison. Man, I don't want to regret dropping Addison. But, dude, it's just been tough. It's always hard when we have 3 quarterbacks play for a team in a season because then in terms of understanding the trend, Addison was great with Carson Wentz at quarterback. He was startable at times with McCarthy, but then became not really startable. I mean, he scored a touchdown in week 11. 2 catches. One of them was he wasn't really startable with McCarthy. But maybe, there's something there with Brosner, even if it's just PPR based, But Charbonnet is he has the standalone value. If something happens to Walker, he's a clear cut RB1, would probably be a league winner. So if I had to drop one, I'd drop Addison. But yeah, I mean, this is a good one to bring up. We've mentioned it briefly at the beginning of the stream, but yeah, Tyler Warren, questionable with an illness. Hard to really know what's going on there. If MH Jr. plays, I would start him. Once again, I like the game script there. The matchup is there. The Cardinals throw the football a ton. If he doesn't play, then obviously you're going T-Mac. Who do you like for the next week throughout for defensive streams? Weeks 14 to end. Stream teams only. Most teams are taken. Yeah. I will be putting out another video. I don't know if I'm going to do it this week or next. I'll probably do it this week, being that we're going into week 14, which blows my mind. This season went by so fast. But I'll be doing another defensive stash video for the playoffs because the trends do change. The Buccaneers are still one of the better teams in terms of matchups. They'll be playing the Saints week 14 and the Falcons and the Panthers and the Dolphins. It's a very good overall schedule, but I don't trust this Buccaneers defense. I just don't. Like, I know I had talked about them earlier as a defense to stash for the fantasy playoffs. Boy, I would not have them in my lineup through the fantasy playoffs. I do not trust this defense with a 10-foot pole. But they do have the strength of schedule. The Giants have a really good strength of schedule. They're going to play the Commanders. They're going to play the Vikings. They're going to play the Raiders. They are one of these teams that I don't trust. That run defense sucks. The secondary leaves some gaping holes, but the Giants have a beautiful playoff schedule. The Texans are going to be way too highly rostered, but they still have one of, if not the best playoff schedule. But they do play Kansas City in week 14. The Saints are my team right now to grab if they're out there. Just roster them, guys. Week 14, they get the Bucks. There could be something there, okay, against this banged up Baker moneymaker Mayfield. And then they get the Panthers, the Jets, and the Titans. So even if you're not going to play them week 14 against the Bucks, they still have the best strength of schedule for the playoffs outside of the Texans. The Giants, the Texans, Giants, Saints have the best weeks 15 through 17, but we're talking week 14 included here. The Jets are kind of interesting. They play the Dolphins, the Jags, the Saints. Wrapping it up with the Patriots, it's not great. Yeah. Saints, Giants. I don't trust the Bucks, but they do have the schedule. That's about it. It's not pretty. It's not pretty. And the week 14 involvement doesn't look great overall. The Browns will play the Titans in week 14. So they're a team to pick up. Some would argue the Titans are also a team to pick up, maybe based on how Shedeur Sanders plays this week. But I would be looking at it. Once again, I don't know if the Browns defense can be out there. The Broncos will play the Raiders week 14. They're probably not out there, but they might, coming out of their bye week. The Rams will play the Cardinals. They're probably not out there. Yeah, week 14, not the strongest week. But, hope that helps. Got the Chargers. Yeah, the Chargers are a tough team because I love them this week. I do, but then it's downhill. Eagles, Chiefs, Cowboys, Texans. They could show up in some of these matchups. You know, we just saw the Bears defense show up against the Eagles, for example. But I don't trust them. In fact, when I'm looking at strength of schedule, they have the worst strength of schedule based on what teams have done this year, weeks 14 to 17 and weeks 15 to 17. So they are a strong play this week, and then they are a drop for me. But yeah, I hope that helped. All right, Mando, we got Gainwell, Franklin, Devin Neal, or DK. I'd probably go Troy Franklin, most upside. But if you want a floor, I do really like Kenneth Gainwell and Jaylen Warren. That Bills run defense, bad. Most rushing touchdowns allowed on the season. Third most total touchdowns allowed to running backs. Tied for third most on the season. So I really like Gainwell. And the Steelers, they match up well against the Bills' weaknesses, right? The Bills want to run the football. They want to let Josh Allen move around the pocket, create plays. The Steelers can stop those two things. The Bills' bread and butter isn't necessarily passing the football. They will have to throw this week, and the Steelers' secondary is the weakness of that team. But then on the flip side, Steelers need to run the football because Aaron Rodgers is playing with one hand, and their passing attack is not the strong suit of their offense. And the Steelers are going to be able to run the football against the Bills. So I think Gainwell's going to have another big game. And him and Jalen Warren, a nice little 1-2 punch there. So I like both. All right, Lulu, thank you for the super chat. Let me make sure I don't lose my... Wow, I'm pretty far behind in the chat. I'm sorry, guys. Doing my best here. All right, start Harrison or keep Wilson / Dortch Pierce. So you're starting Wilson and Dortch already? Or is it Wilson or Dortch or Pierce? I mean, I'll say it this way. If Marvin Harrison Jr. plays, Wilson is still very startable. Dortch is not to me. He drops down to like a very risky flex option that will be absolutely touchdown dependent. If Marvin Harrison does not play, then Wilson is a must start. Greg Dortch is a strong flex. Alec Pierce is not really in the mix here for me. And I said the same thing last week about Josh Downs and Alec Pierce. I don't love him in this matchup against the Texans. Fourth fewest fantasy points to wide receivers allowed. I would feel a lot better about the Cardinals wide receivers. But yeah, it'll depend there if MH plays or not. But yeah, Wilson, startable. If you got MH and Wilson, you can play both of them. If MH doesn't play, you can play Wilson and Dortch. Those would be the guys based on matchup that I would gravitate towards. Thank you again for the super chat. All right, Kels, Jalen Warren, Hendo, or Parker Washington. I mean, I do really like Jalen Warren this week, but it's got to be Trayvon Henderson against the Giants' run defense. Got to be Hendo here. I mean, Giants over 1,500 rushing yards allowed on the season, the second most of any team. 16 total touchdowns allowed to running backs, 12 on the ground, 4 through the air. That is the second worst of any team, only to the Bengals in both those metrics. They allow an average of 29 total fantasy points to running backs. So if you're worried about Ramondre getting involved, both guys can, have value here. But still, last week, Henderson had 21 total touches compared to Mondre's 7 touches. And yes, Henderson or Ramondre got a little bit of involvement at the goal line last week, but it's still Henderson's backfield. So I'm starting Henderson with confidence. Plus, BTJ will be back this week. So Brendan Strange is back in the mix. I like Parker Washington. I think he's been a very good flex option as of late, but I'm a little worried that might kind of die down here. We'll see. Maybe BTJ dies down. We'll see. All right, start 2, David. Judkins, Vidal, or Gainwell. I would go Gainwell. We just kind of talked about that. I think Gainwell's a very strong start. I think Vidal's a strong start, but kind of tough to bench Judkins right now. We are kind of looking at a messy, windy, cold forecast for that Niners game, and I think that Judkins is going to get the rock a lot. The Niners defense improving against the run, 17th overall, still not great. I kind of worry about the Browns offense this week, but I overly worried last week. I just worry that it's going to get a bit stagnant here. And they were relatively stagnant last week, Sanders did enough to not ruin the game. The Geno Smith did enough to help out the Browns. The Browns defense did enough, but it was really the running backs who showed up last week for the Browns. And can they do it again this week? Robert Saleh is a great defensive coordinator. So maybe there's more upside with Gainwell overall, but it's tough to bench Judkins. And once again, the Steelers running backs just line up so well against this Bills defense. But I think Vidal is very safe. Maybe not the most upside, but very safe. Judkins is tough to bench. Last week, I was worried about Judkins. I gave a lot of answers. I was like, I'm not in on Judkins this week. And Judkins was not great, 2.9 yards per carry, but he had the 2 touchdowns, right? He did get a little banged up last week, too. He's fine, though, off the injury report, able to come back. And Sampson didn't really do anything all game. He just had that big catch. But Sampson did have 9 touches last week. The Browns will need him this week. So I'd probably go Judkins and Gainwell. But it's very close. All right, too many. I'm dropping the bottom of the chat. Too many fantasy guys like to hear themselves talk. Just answer the damn questions and move on. We just want confirmation. Listen, I have a very specific way of answering questions. I go through the exact data that I think will help you guys have the best possible outcome on a week-to-week basis. So my job is to try and help you guys to the best of my ability. So if that takes me a while to do, then I'm going to do it. Okay. Where's your question? All right. Everybody, it's cooler hands moment. PPR, start 1 running back, 1 wide receiver, 1 flex. Kyron, Dowdle, Judkins, Igbuka, Olave, Vidal, and Devin Neal. So I'm definitely starting Kyron. It's not even close here. Kyron is a must-start player. I think he will bounce back with ease this week. They didn't need to use him last week. They just did not. And the Panthers still struggle against the run. 27th overall in terms of fantasy points allowed. 12 total touchdowns allowed, 10 on the ground, 2 through the air, over 1,200 rushing yards. This is a get-right spot. He will be utilized this week. I love Kyron this week. In that same matchup, I am a bit worried about Dowdle. This is the first time Dowdle's come up tonight, but it is a tough matchup. That Rams run defense is for real. Only 3 touchdowns allowed on the year. That is crazy. They are right there tied with the Patriots for the fewest total touchdowns allowed to running backs. They've only given up 855 rushing yards. And I know some people looking at Rico last week and are like worried because of the Chuba usage, but really they just had to use both guys. And I mean, Rico still had 10 touches compared to Chuba's 7. I think Rico's still the clear back. He did have 6.3 yards per carry. So if we're just going 1 running back, and we just talked about Judkins for a bit, it's got to be Kyron. And I would feel really good even based on last week. I think Olave is a solidified start too. Like I would not be overreactive to the, maybe quarterback play or anything else going on with the Saints. As bad as Tyler Shuck was last week, they still threw the football 43 times. And he still had 243 passing yards, which and that offense will get it done because most of that is funneling to Chris Olave. I mean, he had 13 targets last week. So the Dolphins are a team that is quietly very good against the wide receiver position. The 6th fewest fantasy points allowed to wide receivers, but still it's a good spot for Olave. He should be a solidified wide receiver. So you're good there. The flex is very interesting here because there's really an argument for any flex option. Like Dowdle gets the volume, Igbuka gets the targets, Judkins is still the RB1 there. Vidal should see RB1 volume, as should Devin Neal. So I think it kind of boils down here, like, who do you feel the best about? What game script do you feel is the best positive flow? I kind of do lean Igbuka because the Bucs at the end of the day will need to throw the football, and I do expect that game to be relatively competitive on both sides and both passing offenses to be active. So I guess I lean Igbuka, but we talked about him earlier. I'm a little worried, and I'm not really too worried about Igbuka, but I am worried about Baker. And as of late, Igbuka has not been somebody that we can rely on, but he is still a very good flex option with upside. So like maybe if you like Judkins more in the flex, I think that's fine. If you want to risk Dowdle in the matchup, I think it's fine. All these guys there's a conversation for, but Kyron, Olave for sure, and then whoever you feel best about in the flex there. All right. Let's get back. I am a little bit behind in the chat. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. All right, this is where we were. Start Rico or Kyron. I would go Kyron for all the reasons we just went over. RJ Harvey or Rondell. I'm going RJ Harvey. This matchup too good to ignore. Rondell's okay. Fannin or Waller rest his season. I mean, I think Waller's like, it's too risky to say. I mean, Fannin gets the usage, and Njoku is kind of being phased out. He's had 2 targets or less in 3 straight games. But like, he's had 2 touchdowns in the last 4 games. Like, I hate the Browns tight ends. Like, I think Fannin's very talented, and like, I still think Njoku's very talented, but in terms of their usage, man, I just don't think it's good for fantasy. I don't hate them. I hate them in terms of fantasy. So I guess Waller, but Fannin feels safer. Any ideas? Packers and Bears are available. Most are gone. I think we already hit this in terms of defenses. Sit JJ for Mechie. Bro, could you imagine last week of August if I told you you'd be asking this question here? I mean, Mechie's seen 82% or more snaps in 2 straight weeks. 3 catches in week 11, did score a touchdown. 6 this past week, did score a touchdown. The Falcons secondary's been playing weaker as of late. We just don't know what to expect with Brosner at quarterback. Like I mentioned earlier, it could be better than maybe most are anticipating. But I think that Seahawks defense is got to have a good day, man. I mean, JJ still has to have a floor. I mean, if you're an undrafted free agent quarterback getting your first NFL start, at the very least, you're going to go to throw the ball to Justin Jefferson, right? But I mean, I think that Seahawks defense is going to be stout this week. 11th fewest fantasy points to wide receivers. Chat, this one's crazy. Who would you guys start, JJ or Mechie? My gut is saying Mechie. Oh my gosh. What's up, Andrea? Good to see you. Brenton Strange or Ertz? I'll go Strange. Waller or Jawan? I'll go Jawan Johnson. Thank you for subscribing, Joe. PPR, Lamar, CMC, Brees, Nico, Sutton, Kittle, Franklin, Juckins, Pierce, Tet, Warren, Burrow. Should anyone on my bench be starting? No, unless you want to diversify the Broncos wide receivers. Bench one and put Juckins in, or maybe Tet in at the flex, but I'm okay with starting Sutton and Franklin personally. Diggs or Michael Wilson? Diggs has the floor. Michael Wilson probably has more upside. Might be dependent on if MH plays or not. If MH does not play, I'd probably go Michael Wilson, but I really like Diggs. We talked about him earlier in the stream. Both very good options, Joe. Flex one, PPR, Dowdle or Gainwell. Already have Warren as my RB2. I go Gainwell this week. Most weeks I probably would diversify here and go Dowdle. But man, that 1-2 punch of Gainwell and Warren is looking strong, and I don't expect it to slow down this week against that Bills run defense. And I mean, Gainwell very efficient last week. 10 carries, 9.2 yards per carry, but he's had 6 or more targets, 6 or more catches in 2 straight games. He is getting that receiving work at the end of the day, and Jaylen Warren is not. He hasn't had more than 2 catches, or actually look on the season, he's only had over 2 catches 3 times this year. And he hasn't had more than 2 catches since week 7. So, he is getting, 18 touches on the ground, but we're looking at 16 touches and 18 touches. I mean, it's not bad there. It's a pretty clear split. So, yeah, I'm worried about Dowdle against this Rams run defense. I do not like starting running backs against the Rams run defense. All right, Andrea needs a wide receiver and a flex. Nico, Michael Wilson, BTJ, QJ, Vidal, and Rico. So I would start Nico and Michael Wilson. And I feel pretty good. Do we trust Ibuka or do we panic? We touched on him a bit already. It does feel like a trap here. Like we finally bench him, get worried. Like And then he has a good game. You know, he is due for a big game, and it feels like this is a spot where he could get it done. I am less worried about Ibuka and more worried about Baker actually being healthy. J Pool says, hit the like. Please do. It does help. Full PPR, Juckins, Bucky, Vidal, Ibuka, Myers, Jaden Higgins can only start 3. Myers is in a good spot. And he has, it's tough because BTJ is coming back into the mix, but I think I'd keep Myers in the lineup. I think I'd probably go Juckins and Ibuka, but Higgins is sneaky here too. Let me wait. Hold on. I think I go Myers, Vidal, and Juckins. But if you want to go Ibuka over one of those 2 running backs, that's fine too. All right, Andrea, different leagues needs a wide receiver and a flex. T-Mac, Pittman, Higgins, Mechie, Rico, half PPR. I feel like Pittman, like regardless of format, needs to be in starting lineups. He's been that good on the season. He is your wide receiver 12 and half PPR. And he has had a touchdown in 3 of the last 5 games, 7 touchdowns in 11 games on the year. So he has that touchdown upside, which is going to be valuable in half PPR. I have a tough time benching T-Mac right now. Garbage time will be there if nothing else. But you can make an argument for any of these guys, for sure. Are we trusting Addison? No. But do I trust Dortch? If Marvin Harrison Jr. is out, you can start Dortch here. But even then, like, I don't like Addison this week. I just don't. Chargers are tough against opposing wide receivers. 5th fewest fantasy points allowed. Full PPR, Juckins, Bucky, Vidal, Ibuka, Myers. Did I just hit this one? Yes. 1 running back, 1 wide receiver, 1 flex. So I said, yeah, Juckins, Vidal, Ibuka. No, I said Juckins, Vidal, Myers. But if you want to go Ibuka over 1, I think that's fine. Rams or Broncos defense? Ooh. I'd probably just go the Rams. Give me the Rams. Would you start between Harvey, Brees, or Juckins? Oh, man, that's tough. I love Harvey this week. I think Juckins is still very solid, but I'm going to go Brees. Brees hasn't come up tonight. I love Brees Hall this week. I think he's going to have a very good game. He's due for a touchdown. So you guys see on the screen is one of my picks on Underdog this week, and so is RJ Harvey. But, yeah, this Falcons run defense sucks. This just is a game where Brees Hall is going to get all the volume. They're at home. He hasn't scored a touchdown since week 8. I mean, he hasn't scored many touchdowns on the year. He only has 3. So I'm sorry. He's actually had a receiving touchdown in week 10. My bad. But he's due for a rushing touchdown. I think he gets one this week. I'm going Brees, but if you went Harvey, I couldn't blame you. Juckins, wouldn't really blame you either. Neal or Dowdle, that's tough because we don't really know what to expect out of Devin Neal. I do like him. You know, I think that this is a good spot against the Dolphins, but the Dolphins, as bad as they have been against a run on the year, like 24th overall in terms of fantasy points allowed, they have been better as of late. And they've only given up 6 rushing touchdowns. So we look at teams in the bottom 12 in terms of fantasy points allowed to running backs. They've given up the fewest total touchdowns and the fewest rushing touchdowns. Only 1 receiving touchdown. And they've been better. But Dowdle gets that. I mean, I would be pretty spooked about Rico Dowdle this week. Not based on the usage or whatever last week, but based on the fact that he's playing the Rams defense. And I said it last week about Sean Tucker and Rachaad White. You know, most guys were only considering Sean Tucker, but I was like, I'm not going out of my way to start Sean Tucker this week against the Rams. No way. And it's probably going to, I mean, the 2 teams, the Rams and the Patriots, these are the 2 teams that, like, I do not want to start running backs against. And the Lions have been very good, too. They're probably right there. Broncos are close. Steelers are up there. But the teams that put the most fear in my heart are the Rams and the Patriots. Flex Brenton Strange or Bam Knight. I'd probably go Bam Knight with BTJ back in the mix. This is a game where it's kind of tough. What does the volume in this passing attack for the Jags look like? It's a good spot against the Titans, but I go I go Bam Knight. I think even if MH plays at fire up Wilson, appendix surgery is no joke, so he may be limited. Yeah. MH Jr. for me, still a very solid start. Sorry, by the way, guys. I have had a head cold all weekend, so if I'm sniffly, I'm sorry. But yeah, I'm still like shocked MH might play this week, honestly. With coming back from appendix surgery, I thought he'd be out at least a month. But I'm not an NFL athlete, so what do I know? All right. Slick Nick Nice, NYCE. Starting tight end. I mean, if Warren plays, you got to start Warren. You don't bench him. Brenton Strange or Waller if Warren's out. The floors with Strange, the upsides with Waller. All right, we got this one. Need to start one wide receiver and flex one. Addison without JJ McCarthy, right? Or Dortch. Well, if Marvin Harrison doesn't play, then it's Dortch. Did you already get this one? But I don't trust Addison this week. I just don't, bro. So I hate to give that answer, but I would not feel great if he was in my lineup. Then flex Strange Knight. I would try to flex Bam Knight here. He's gonna get the volume. I try to go Bam Knight. Chandler, we need Gainwell, Michael Wilson, Neal, or BTJ. My order would be Michael Wilson, Gainwell, BTJ, then Neal. Dowdle or Marks in full PPR? Probably still Dowdle. I mean, I like Woody Marks, but I just have a tough time trusting. He had 17 touches against Buffalo and only 7.9 fantasy points. 19 touches against Tennessee, only 6.1 fantasy points. Like, I get that the red zone opportunities aren't his fault. Like, Nick Chubb gets in the mix. But, man, he just faced two of the worst run defenses and didn't give us anything. Now he gets the Colts, who are 13th overall in terms of fantasy points allowed to running backs. I guess Dowdle, but we've already talked about Dowdle. I'm spooked on him, but I think I just don't really trust Woody Marks, but I guess he's due for a touchdown. Like if he had a touchdown in each of the previous two games, he'd have a really good stat line. All right, Cake J1. Fannin in bad weather or Waller. Could pick up Gunnar Helm. I probably just risk it with Waller. What's up, Albert? Jonathan, Rondell or Sutton? I'm going Sutton against the Commanders secondary. All right, guys, trying to go as fast as I can here. Michael, Kyron, Brown, Dowdle, Woody Corm. Someone dropped Pollard. Yeah, you don't need to pick him up. You don't need to pick him up. Pick up somebody else. But Kyron, Chase Brown should be in the starting lineups, and then Dowdle should be considered. But this week it's a bad matchup. But yeah, you don't need to pick up Pollard. Nino, start 3. ETN, Harvey, Neal, Kenneth, Marks, Pierce. Definitely ETN. He's an undisputed must-start player this week. Great matchup for him. Harvey, fire him up. Then I'd probably start Kenneth Walker. That's a good little lineup. Should I start Waller or Kittle? Kittle. I get it, yeah. Maybe it is a game where Kittle blocks a lot. The forecast not great here. It feels like a sloppy, gross game, but it's Kittle, bro. It's week 13. You can't bench a guy like Kittle right now. Give me Kittle. Need to bench one. Marv, BTJ, QJ, or Neil. Call me crazy. I'm benching BTJ. Unless Marvin doesn't play. I mean, it's a good matchup for Brian Thomas. But what has he really given us as of late? And now they got Brenton Strange and Myers in this mix. I'll just bench BTJ here. What's up, Jay Weezy? Woody Merckx, Gainwell, or Dowdle? Gainwell. He's got the matchup. He's getting the volume. Go Gainwell. Gives you the most upside if you're down right now. 36% chance to win. Eagles play the Raiders, Commanders, weeks 15, 16. Yeah, that could be a play for sure, but they're pretty highly rostered. Maybe they drop in roster percentage over the next week, though. Yeah, they have dropped. I mean, they're 68% rostered. And they're on the road against the Chargers this week, so they could drop more. But yeah, it's a good call. Raiders at Washington. They could easily bounce back here. Be valuable starts there. Then they get Buffalo. They're not going to be a play in the championship. Wondering if I should start Henry, Gadsden, or Jawan. I mean, not Henry. Henry's not. No. He played the Bengals last week. Okay. He's going to, just drift off into non-existence, being a streaming option. The Giants are okay against tight ends. It's got to be Gadsden or Jawad. Gadsden is kind of a dart throw, and the Raiders are quietly very good against tight ends. 4th fewest fantasy points. They've only allowed 42 catches and 435 receiving yards, 3 receiving touchdowns to tight ends. So I don't really know why Gadsden is projected to have this huge game when you look around this week. So I don't particularly love him, but he could always do something. I'd probably just go Jawan Johnson. I mean, what is there to dislike about Jawan Johnson right now? Is the ceiling super high? No, but he's had 10 or more fantasy points in every game since week 7. And Miami's allowing the 4th most fantasy points to tight ends. So fire up Jawan. Miami, Chargers, or Tennessee this week? Chargers for sure. Bucky or Sutton? I'm going Sutton personally. We'll see how Bucky looks first game back, but I'm going Sutton. Herbert or Dart? I'll go Herbert. I think he's going to have a good bounce back game out of the bye week. Pick 2, flex, and a wide receiver. I'll go Sutton. Vidal for the floor, Igbuka for upside. I can't believe Igbuka has become a player I'm worried about. Woody or Rico? I guess Woody. You could go Rico if you wanted to. Who should I start as a safer play at flex, half PPR? Warren, Juckins, Sampson, Diggs. I'll go Jalen Warren. Jalen Warren. The matchup's there. Let's take it. But Juckins is good. Diggs is good. Mr. Q&A, I know. I'm sorry. I barely streamed this season, but I will be streaming once a week for the remainder of the fantasy season. Saturday nights. Carolina's missing some offensive line. That is true. They did get banged up this past week. Tet or Juckins? I'd probably go Tet. But you could go Juckins. All right, I think we got all these, but just to reiterate, I go Gainwell and Jawan. Who would you start? Nico, Diggs, Franklin, Ladd? I mean, you got some options here. Any of these guys could outscore each other. I'm going Ladd. I think Ladd's going to have a good game. But I like all these guys this week. I'll start 2. Ladd and Nico. But I really like Franklin. I think Diggs going to have a good game, so don't be mad at me. I go Ladd and Nico, but very close here. Jennings, Michael Wilson, Mooney, Godwin, Tet, pick 2. Yeah, I think Jennings is kind of quietly good. He hasn't come up tonight. mean, he's been solid. He's had 3 touchdowns in 3 of the last 4 games. But the Browns have been quietly, vastly improved against the wide receiver position. Now allowing the 8th fewest fantasy points to wide receivers. It's going to be windy, gross. I'll go Tet and Michael Wilson. But if you want to go Jennings over one or the other, you could. Toeman PPR. Thank you guys so much for all the fantasy questions, by the way. Do my best to get through these quickly as time's going on here. Thank you guys for hanging out tonight, though. All right, so 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a flex. You already played Mahomes. Need a tight end. So you're starting CMC. I'll go Walker over Aaron Jones. I'll go Olave, Diggs. I'll flex Jennings. Barner and Waller's a coin flip here, man. Both touchdown dependent. Just go Waller, I guess. We had that question earlier. I mean, Barner's pretty much touchdown dependent. I do like him. And I'll go Rams defense. So CMC, Walker, Olave, Diggs, Jennings in the flex. Tight end, kind of a question mark, then Rams. Do you think Rams are good for the rest of the season? Let's see here. I'm going to play Arizona, Detroit, Seattle, Atlanta. I mean, honestly, I think that they could give you a good enough floor in each of those matchups. I guess I should look at this week too. Carolina, Arizona, Detroit, Seattle, Atlanta. I think you could start the Rams defense the rest of the way. I really do. Need upside. Judy, Mooney, Wilson, Jennings, Ted. Wilson, if we're just going for pure upside. Wilson, Tet, Jennings, Mooney, Judy would be my order. Need to start 2 runner backs. Running backs. Runner back sounds better. Anyways, Hall, Kenneth, Harvey, Vidal, Jay Jettis. Yeah. Got to go Brees Hall. Got to go RJ Harvey. Give me Kenneth Walker. JJ hits the boot. Should I start Neal or Bucky? Probably Neal. Probably. What's our confidence level in the chat on Bucky Irving this week? I might be panicking on Bucky for no reason. Mooney, Igbuka, Mechie, Pierce, Parker, pick one. I would probably just go Igbuka in this circumstance and risk the upside. Is it possible Tracy has a decent game in full PPR? Yeah, it's definitely possible. I mean, the Patriots' run defense, I've talked about it during the stream. It's definitely not one that I enjoy, but they have given up 410 receiving yards, 65 receptions to running backs. So if we look at teams in the top 10 in terms of fantasy points allowed to running backs, they've given up the most receptions, and they've given up the second or third most receiving yards of any team in that metric. So, yeah, I think Tracy could have a decent game for sure. Herbert or Dart? I'm going to go Herbert this week. Brissett or Dart? I will go Brissett. Should I start Strange over Warren? If Warren plays, I will start him. If he plays, I'll start him. And that's a 1 o'clock game, so it's not like we're waiting all afternoon. BTJ coming back into the mix kind of makes things a little bit more unclear. And the Titans are pretty good against tight ends. 8th fewest fantasy points allowed. So I still prefer Tyler Ward. Vidal's getting brought up a lot. I would caution in using him if you have other options. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, he's been disappointing at times. I just feel like this is going to be a game where the Chargers are going to play quite well, and they could turn to the run game as things go on. Jalen Warren, Henderson, or Parker Washington. We got that earlier. Definitely going to be Parker Washington. All right. So chat is repeating for me. Let me fix where I'm at. I did not see this super chat earlier. So my bad. Lucky Leo, I'm starting Warren, I think. Do I also start Gainwell? Or start Warren and put Tet in at flex instead of Gainwell? Need some upside. Well, the upside lies with these Steelers running backs. I mean, I'm okay with starting both of them. They both saw double-digit touches last week. Jalen Warren, 18 touches, 68 rushing yards, a rushing touchdown against Chicago. Kenneth Gainwell had 16 total touches, 10 carries, 92 rushing yards, 9.2 yards per carry, 6 targets, 6 catches, 30 receiving yards. So against the Bills this week, a team that's been awful against the run, giving up the third most fantasy points to running backs. They've allowed 15 total touchdowns to running backs. The Steelers are at home. I would, if you want upside, I'm going Warren and Gainwell. This could be a tough matchup for T-Mac. Or maybe, I mean, yeah, it is the Rams defense. Like, Bryce Young could really struggle this week. I still like T-Mac, but yeah, if we're going for upside, give me Warren and Gainwell. Sorry, I did not see this super chat earlier. All right, yeah, my chat is all screwed up on my side, so my bad. All right, I think I'm in the right spot now. Yeah, maybe I repeated a couple questions by accident. Hard to explain. The way the chat comes through for me and hard to show it on the screen is going to be different from what you guys see. So, all right, Dowdle averages 6 yards a carry against San Fran. He will get the ball this week. Yeah, he was still very efficient with the football in his hands last week. And the Niners have not been that good against the run. But yeah, he only saw 10 touches last week and only 6 on the ground. But it was a game where from pretty early on in the game, you know, the Panthers needed to throw the football. But I'm not worried about the split. I was not ever worried about it based on last week. It's just the matchup against the Rams. And this is not a defense that I love any running back against. And I talked a lot about it last week with Sean Tucker, and he had 3.5 yards per carry. He did have 12 touches, but like only 5.6 fantasy points. And, you know, Rachaad White saw a little bit of volume, 8 total touches. Rachaad White was actually the more efficient running back last week with 5.4 yards per carry. But yeah, it's not about the split here for me whatsoever. It is about the matchup. Jay Simpson, we got Baker Purdy or pick up Tua. If Warren's out, Waller or pick up Parkinson. Dowdle or BTJ. Yeah, these are tough questions. I think Baker is going to have another struggle bus week. I do not, excuse me, Brock Purdy is, and maybe Baker for that matter. I mean, what other options? Tua really the best option out there? Guess that makes sense. But yeah, Purdy on the road against Cleveland. The forecast for this game is not great. I haven't actually pulled up the weather report. So let's see. Because really, we're expecting pretty decent weather this week. Overall, it's not too bad. But the Niners at Browns, cloudy skies, cold temperatures expected, light rain is possible throughout the game, moderate winds. And right now, the wind is like super strong there. So wet conditions, windy. Jags at Titans, expecting light rain potentially, but it's probably going to be clear by 1 p.m. I'm on Eastern time, so whatever time the game starts for you. Bills at Steelers, rainy, but once again, should be clear. Could come back during the game. Broncos at Commanders, another one where rain is possible. And since it's at night, could see some windy atmospheres there too. But the worst forecast is the Niners at Browns, and the biggest thing is the wind. So, yeah, I don't feel great about Purdy this week. And that on top of that, it's just a tough matchup against the Browns. So out of these options, I guess Baker. I'm not starting Tua. I'm not. I just can't. But yeah, I mean, I know it's kind of tough this point in the year. Like, there's not really streaming options at quarterback. Like, I think Trevor Lawrence could be a guy this week, but I also think that the Jags will turn to the run game in that matchup. Maybe Sam Darnold is available. I like him okay against the Vikings, but if those two guys aren't out there, like, there's really nobody. So I get it, but I guess Baker. Waller is fine. I like Parkinson. We talked about Parkinson earlier in the stream. Really a coin flip. The better matchup is with Parkinson. Dowdle or BTJ? I don't like either this week, but I guess Dowdle. Browns or Texans defense? Texans will. Oh, Will Anderson not playing. I didn't know that. I'll go the Browns this week because the Colts still have a very good offense. Texans are on the road. Would recommend caution using Vidal if you have other good options. Last meeting, Hampton plus Harris went for just 52 yards on 16 carries with 3 catches for 21 yards. Las Vegas has one of the lowest yards per carry. Yeah, they are quietly pretty good against running backs. I just feel like there's a chance in this game. The Chargers are up early. They turn in the run game and have some success. What's up? Case Space. Good to see you. Pick one. Booty, Aaron Jones. I'll go Booty. Like, I think the Vikings are just going to have a tough week, man. I'm just going to go Booty. He has a lot of upside. It is a good matchup for him. I know he wasn't great this past week, but this feels like a get-right spot where he could see involvement. He matches up good schematically against his Giants defense. Dropping Goddard. Yeah, I have dropped him in a league. He's not seeing that same involvement that made him fantasy relevant earlier in the season, which is kind of baffling because it was like one of the things that was consistently working for the Eagles was how they were using Goddard early in the season. And then they just kind of stopped. But, it's easy to get a lot of roster cloggers at tight end, and Goddard feels like one right now. He'll probably have another good game or two on the season, though. So Bucky expected to play on a snap count. Yeah, I always believed he would play this week. Like, I wasn't worried about him potentially missing. I'm reading the report right now. Yeah, and like, why would he get a full workload with the usage that we've already seen out of Rachaad White and Sean Tucker on the season, and those guys having successful moments on the season too? It makes sense for him to be on a snap count, but he's still very startable. Appreciate that. I love making the content for you guys. How's my final lineup? Hurts, Hendo, Brees, Nico, Ladd, Kyron, Aubrey, Jags. Good spot here. Should be a solid outing for you. Looks good to me. Neil or Vidal. I still lean Vidal here, but I think Neil's fine. Appreciate you, Michael. Mr. Treznico. PPR. Stick with Stevenson or Tucker, Tootin, Spears. I guess I'd risk Stevenson here. Tucker could be interesting. Sean Tucker could be interesting. It's still a good matchup. And once again, we just talked about how Bucky will be on a snap count. Bashal Tootin could be sneaky this week too. I still think Etienne's a clear back there, and I said it all last week too. Yeah, this one's very tough because like Tucker's in a good matchup, but Bucky will get touches. White could get touches. Tootin's in a good matchup, but Etienne's a clear back there. Stevenson could get touches. It's a good matchup, but Hendo's a clear back there. Spears is out of the equation for me here. Really comes down to who you like the most or maybe who you think has the most upside. So it's probably between Sean Tucker and Tootin, but very close. Tough call there. Rico or Olave, Kincaid or Theo. I don't think Kincaid's going to play, but I could be wrong. Okay, I guess he still has a chance, but I thought the reports as of late were trending he might not play. I will go Olave over Rico based on matchup, and I'll go Theo Johnson, who hasn't come up tonight, but Theo Johnson's a good streaming option if you're hurting at tight end. Patriots bottom 10 against tight ends on the season. It's a good spot for him. And he showed good chemistry and outings with Dart at quarterback earlier in the season. Brees, Judkins, Tet, Igbuka, start 3. Give me Brees, Judkins. You can really go with either Tet or Igbuka, whoever you feel better about. But Brees for sure. What's up, Warrior Loft? Start Jay Jettis, Troy Franklin, Malik, Michael Wilson, or MH. Now we're getting an update that MH is going to play. Yeah, I still haven't seen an official report, but I'm not doubting your feedback here. Yeah, I still don't see. I mean, I am reading that he is trending towards playing. A solid chance he'll play. Doesn't really make me worried about Marvin Harrison. I would play Michael Wilson. Can you only start one? See, this is gonna be tough. If you own Michael Wilson and Marvin Harrison, that's gonna be a really tough call. And I really like Troy Franklin here. Jay Jettis gets the boot for me. Malik Washington's not even in the conversation here. I go with one of the Cardinals wide receivers and or Troy Franklin. Yeah, so I see this too where Rappaport's tweeting he's expected to play. So the reports are there. Chitty 5's on my waiver wire. Do you think he comes back anytime soon? Yeah, I mean, he almost played this week. And like, you know, kind of people talk about this, like, I don't know why. And like people say the same thing about Burrow, you know, I don't know why he's playing. Technically, right now, neither the Commanders or the Bengals have been eliminated from playoff contention. Technically. The Bengals have a 2% chance of making it. Commanders a 1% chance, whether they win or lose this week. But more importantly, like these guys want to play football. They do. So let them play. Started Love, AJ Brown, and Rice. Let's go. Started Buka or Lad. I'm leaning Lad. I think it's going to be a good Lad week. Wilson or Harrison. Yeah, this is going to be tough, guys. I lean Wilson because he's not coming off of injury, but I think Harrison's still very solid. The matchup is there for both those guys. Fan and Waller or Strange rest of the season. I will go Strange. Purdy or Tyrod Taylor. Wow. I don't like Purdy this week. I just don't. But I still think he has more upside than Tyrod. But the floor might be safer with Tyrod Taylor. But the floor is like still 13 to 15 fantasy points. So Depends. Do you want the floor or do you want the risk but upside? I think Purdy could have another down week, though. Need upside. I'm down big. Have to play one running back and one flex. ETN, Vidal, QJ, JJ. I would play ETN at running back for sure. If you're down big, I would flex Quentin Johnston. I take the upside. It's a great matchup against the Raiders. The problem with the Chargers wide receivers is like any of these guys can do it on a given week. So there's a bit of a gamble starting any of them. But if you want the upside, QJ is the play. And definitely ETN at running back. How confident are we in Shakir Kincaid? I don't care if Kincaid's playing or not. I mean, he's hardly been involved as of late when he's been healthy. And Shakir is the only pass catcher at wide receiver on a consistent basis. And the Steelers have given up the most fantasy points to or second most to the Cowboys on the season. One of three teams to allow over 2,000 receiving yards on the season, next to the Cowboys and Giants. I'm okay with Shakir. I'm not worried about the status of Kincaid or not. Kincaid, if he plays, could still be limited. Kincaid hasn't had more than 6 targets on the season in a single game. And in 2 of the last 3 games, 3 targets, and that's it. So it doesn't bother me. Leaning Buchanan at MH is starting. I think that's fair. Start 2, Schultz, Parker Washington, Tootin, Tucker, Stevenson. Oh, yeah. A lot of question marks to go around here. A lot of question marks. I'm just the Jaguars wide receivers. Now that BTJ is back in the mix, how does it exactly look? So I think Parker Washington's very startable here. I think Dalton Schultz is a good tight end option this week, but I don't really prefer to flex him. I don't know if he really sees enough there that I would feel great in terms of a flex, but in terms of like a streaming option at tight end, I think that's perfectly fine. I think I would go Parker Washington and Tootin. I do think the Titans are going to show up this week. But I think if you want to go Tucker over one or the other, that's fine. Who do I start? Rodriguez, Higgins, Tucker, or Judy? I'm going to start Jaden Higgins here. Chris Rodriguez, I do like over the next coming weeks, but not particularly this week against the Broncos. I don't trust Trey Tucker or Geno Smith throwing the football. I don't trust Jerry Judy. Jaden Higgins, for sure, Jacob. Oh, this was half PPR. I think you could go Tucker and Tootin. Stevenson has some options here, but our opportunities. That was tough. All right, sorry. I'm not getting notifications on my end from Super Chat, so I do apologize. But as you guys know, if you send a Super Chat, I'm always going to answer it ahead of the regular chat. But let's see here. Start 3. Trey Tucker, Troy Franklin, Michael Wilson, John Mechie. And I cement the playoffs. Should I drop Caleb and pick up Slayton since I have Burrow? Holding the Saints defense. Yeah, I definitely like holding the Saints defense. I would not drop Caleb for Slayton. I don't think it hurts to go into this point of the season with either 2 quarterbacks or 2 tight ends. Use them based on matchup. I know Caleb's been very up and down, and he doesn't feel very startable. Like he's at Green Bay, Cleveland at home, Green Bay at home, at San Francisco. Like it's not the greatest strength of schedule here. But he's still a startable quarterback in any format. And Burrow's going to be at Buffalo, Baltimore at home, at Miami, Arizona. So a bit more startable to say the least. But I would just hold both. I don't think you necessarily like Slayton's going to put your team over the top. In terms of this week, I would bench Trey Tucker. I would go Franklin, Wilson, and Mechie. Those would be the guys I would feel much better about. Really nothing about Trey Tucker that makes me feel good, especially in a tough matchup. Like, he showed up against the Cowboys. They've given up the most fantasy points to wide receivers. It was a good schematic matchup for him. He got a lot of targets in that game. Chargers have given up the 5th fewest fantasy points to wide receivers. So Tucker, Franklin, Wilson, Franklin, Wilson, and Mechie pretty confidently. I would keep Caleb, and I would definitely continue to hold the Saints defense. So there you go. Thanks for the super chat. Start 3. One must be a wide receiver. Sutton, Scary Terry, Kyron, Tracy, Neal, Vidal. Would need upside. So Sutton for sure. Kyron, those guys need to be locked in. I kind of lean Vidal, but I do think you could go Tracy or Neal. I am kind of steering clear of Scary Terry if I have better options just in this week alone. We'll see how things look, but I don't like the matchup. I'm not in on Terry this week. If it was my lineup, I'd have Sutton, Kyron, and Vidal in. But there's definitely an argument for one of the other running backs. Falcons defense are the Browns. I will go with the Browns this week. They have been pretty legit. It's going to be a gross game, windy. I think Purdy's thrown an interception in every game he's played this year. The Browns have had 16 or more fantasy points in 2 straight games, 11 or more fantasy points in every game since week 7, except for on the road against the Jets of all teams. I don't really trust that Falcons defense. I do like them this week, but yeah, I just feel better overall about the Browns. And like I said, I mean, Niners offense not bad, but yeah, Purdy has thrown an interception in every game this year except for week 11. So 7 interceptions on the year and a lost fumble on the year and just a few starts. So give me the Browns. All right, start 4. 2 must be running backs. Rico already starting Tortilla, T-Mac, Vidal, Neal, Bam Knight, Carter, Shakir. Man, I like Bam Knight here. Call me crazy. I would go Bam Knight and Shakir. But if you like one of the other running backs, if you like Vidal, I think once again, I think Vidal just has a safe floor this week. I like Neal. Rico, like we've talked about him. I don't like the matchup. But Shakir, I think, should be in the lineup here. If you want to go Robinson, I don't hate it. Just don't love it. Bam Knight, I think, is sneaky. I bet Bam Knight's kind of like Vidal. I just think it's a safe floor. So whatever running back you like the best in Shakir. Start 3, Franklin, Wilson, MH, Sutton, Shakir. Yeah, good options here. I mean, MH, Wilson, they have the matchup. Sutton, Franklin, they have the matchup. Shakir has the matchup too. I mean, these guys, you can't really go wrong. I do think the Cardinals will need to throw the football more than the Broncos this week. I do think Shakir will have to be involved in this matchup. I'll go Shakir. It's crazy because I think MH and Sutton have the safer floor compared to Franklin and Wilson, but Franklin and Wilson feel like they have more upside. Very close. I might go Wilson, Sutton, Shakir, but any of these guys could outscore each other. The matchups are all very good here. And the only reason I lean Wilson over MH is because MH is coming off of being injured. I still trust Brian Thomas. Well, the short answer is no. In case Tyler Warren misses, which tight end is best this week? Theo, Barner, Schultz, or Ingram? I'll go Schultz, Theo Johnson, Barner, Ingram. And I wouldn't even really consider Ingram. I think there's good enough options here that You don't need to consider Ingram. He's been doo-doo. All right, sorry, last question. No reason to apologize. Happy to answer as many questions as you guys have. Would you drop Tucker for Slayton, Washington, or Higgins? Which Tucker? Trey Tucker? Yeah, Trey Tucker is in the earlier question. I would drop him for Jaden Higgins. Yeah. Because like the problem with Trey Tucker is, I mean, when are you going to trust Trey Tucker in your lineup? He gets the Chargers, the Broncos, the Eagles, the Texans, and the Giants, which is good. But are you going to start him in any of those matchups? And I know the Eagles have not been consistent, but against the Raiders, they're going to show up. That game's in Philly. So maybe you would play him in week 17 against the Giants. I would rather have Jaden Higgins for sure. Like, I would make that move right now. Higgins hasn't exactly been consistent, but he's had a touchdown in 3 of the last 5 games, double digits in 3 of the last 5 games. He's close enough to the number 2 receiving option on this team. I know Christian Kirk like finally showed up and did something, but and then Schultz gets volume. But yeah, I would drop Trey Tucker, sorry, for Higgins. Like right now. I sent BTJ for Adams and Travion early on. Whole group chat hated this trade from my side. There you go. Great trade for you. Really wasn't that bad of a trade, or even early in the season. Like, even if you did it week 1, I mean, Adams, was he a 3rd, 4th rounder this year? Kind of depended on your league, but getting the potential. And Henderson was still like a 3rd rounder this year too. Good trade. 2 start 4. 2 must be running backs. Genty, Cook, Rico, Warren, Pittman, Shakir need upside. Well, Cook's got to be in the lineup. Warren, I think, has to be in the lineup based on matchup. Ooh, that makes it tough because, like, I still think Genty is. I mean, it's just tough to bench Genty because there's only so much on that Raiders offense, and the Chargers haven't been very good against running backs this year, at least compared to how stiff they are against wide receivers. They're not awful against running backs, 16th, but not great. And Genty's had 5 or more targets in 4 straight games, 8 targets in the last 2 games. A touchdown in 3 of the last 4. So I probably flex Genty and flex. But I mean, like, I like Pittman and Shakir. So I think Shakir probably has more upside than Pittman. So I guess go Genty, Cook, Warren, Shakir, but it's really tough for me to bench Pittman. Do you start defenses against your own players? For example, I have Genty and the Chargers defense is good this week, and I have them. Should I avoid that? It doesn't matter. I wouldn't worry about it. Yeah. Don't go starting the Dolphins or Niners. No, I wouldn't worry about it. Like, Genty can still have 6 catches for 60 receiving yards and, 16 touches, or score a touchdown and 5 catches. And that's the only touchdown the Chargers give up. The Chargers defense can cause 3 turnovers in this game against Geno Smith and the Raiders, but Genty can still run for 80 yards and have 6 catches, So, yeah, don't overthink it. Start the best players here, including the Chargers defense. Rank these defenses in order. Chargers, Falcons, I would go Chargers, Jags, but the Jags are risky. I like them, but they're risky. Falcons, Niners, Dolphins. Last 2 are, you could argue either way. Rico or Bam Knight. Call me crazy. I'm going Bam Knight this week. Call me crazy. Call me crazy. And Bam Knight is out. Bam Knight's going to play. So would I start Carter for Tucker, Tootin, or Stevenson? No, I'm less confident in Michael Carter than I am in Bam Knight. Bam Knight has like been pretty good. Carter's had moments, I guess. But Bam Knight's going to play, so I wouldn't even consider this scenario. Are we trusting? Yes, I'm still trusting Michael Wilson this week. Even with MH, I'm still trusting him, as in Michael Wilson. Should I start Kittle? Yes. But if you really don't like Kittle, like I do think Theo Johnson's a good option, and Strange and Waller are decent options. Don't let me talk you guys out of like your gut feeling on a player. But personally, if I own Kittle, I'm not going to stream a tight end this week. But Theo Johnson is a very solid start this week. You know, he's been solid as of late. Need some help in my wide receiver slot and 2 in my flex. Do I start Sutton, Olave, Tet, Vidal, or Keenan Allen? First time Keenan Allen's come up tonight. I do think Keenan Allen's in a good spot here. It's a good schematic matchup for him. It's also been difficult to trust. But yeah, I would just start Sutton and Olave. It wouldn't even be a question for me. Those guys would just be my lineup. I do think Tet is very close, and the other guys are still worth mentioning here. But yeah, Sutton and Olave would be in my lineup. Aaron Jones or Judkins? Judkins. I don't trust the Vikings at all this week. What's up, Black Mamba? Hope you've been doing well, too. Ibuka, Henderson, or Rico? Henderson. Travion Henderson, for sure. Great matchup. Pats are at home. Week before the bye week. Henderson was still the clear-cut RB1 last week. He's got to be in lineups. Strange or Ertz, Debo, DK, Myers, half PPR. Strange over Ertz. I'll go Debo and half PPR. He tends to get that involvement in garbage time, which could happen this week. Aaron Jones or Judkins? I'm going Judkins once again. Yeah. Don't trust the Vikings this week. Mooney, Mechie, Godwin, Higgins, pick 2. I'll go Mechie and Higgins. I don't trust Godwin, but if you did like Mooney over one of the two, I think that's okay. But based on recent volume and usage, I will go Mechie and Higgins. And I do think that they give you the safest potential there. So, yeah, I think they're solid enough. All right, guys, we finally made it to the bottom of the stream here. So thank you guys for a great stream tonight. Awesome questions. I know there's a lot going on and there's a lot at stake. Just remember to trust your gut, not be overreactive. And we're getting closer to the fantasy playoffs. Next week is week 14. We essentially only have 4 weeks left. 14, 15, 16, 17. That's it. You know, it's a weird week. A lot of games already played. 4 games already down. Big, high-scoring games. So I know a lot of us feel like we're in a weird position going into the weekend, but just remember, start your studs, trust your gut, all that good stuff. And, yeah, the stakes are high, boys and girls. But I will be back on next Saturday. We'll be on our normal schedule this week. I know this past week's schedule was a little bit weird with the holiday and everything. But yeah, we'll have start sits. Well, we'll start with the waiver wire. Then we'll have our must-start defenses. Then we'll have start sits at wide receiver, running back, quarterback, tight end. Our kicker rankings. Our nuclear video, my 5 must-start players for the week. Then I will do some sort of playoff-oriented video for Friday. And we'll kick it off with the Saturday stream. And then I put out that 5 stats video either Saturday sometime or early Sunday. So regular schedule will be up this week. And then you guys, of course, can check out my Dynasty content. Right now, we're just putting out one video a week on the Dynasty channel with Chris and Pierre of Fantasy Endgame. If you guys are into Dynasty content, I will link my most recent video at the bottom of the chat. If you guys are playing Dynasty, make sure you guys go check out that channel and subscribe. We're trying to get that channel to 1,000 subscribers. We got a little bit of ways to go. No Tyler Warren. I'm going Hill. Good luck. Anytime you're going Hill, good luck. But yeah, guys, even though the fantasy season's beginning to wrap up here, gonna have plenty of content coming for you guys all off season. I'll be making Dynasty content on the Dynasty channel with the fellows from Fantasy Endgame. I've got some other things I'm cooking up here that I'll be talking about on Discord soon. If you guys aren't part of the Discord, it is completely free to join, and you guys can always hop on there, talk to everybody in the community, get some feedback, ask questions, get responses on there. And I'll let you guys know when we go live, and any kind of announcements I have for you guys will be on there. Then, of course, you guys can drop any of your fantasy questions on any of the YouTube videos throughout the week, and I answer as many of those questions as I can. So Discord invite at the bottom of the chat there for you guys as well. All right, guys, thank you so much for the fantasy questions tonight. Thank you for allowing me to answer your guys' fantasy questions. I hope everyone had a great holiday. Hope you guys have a fantastic rest of the weekend. Be safe. And that'll do it. I'll be back next week. So with that, I'll say thank you guys so much for watching and or listening. And remember, you saw it here on The Catch. And